In this lesson, we will demonstrate how to compute an employee's gross earnings, FICA tax, Medicare tax, and SDI deduction for an employee who worked 46.75 hours and had a regular rate of $8.24 per hour. Now, in this example, we will assume that the employee earns overtime for any time worked in excess of 40 hours. So, let's first compute the number of overtime hours worked. To do so, we'll take the hours worked, 46.75, and from that subtract 40 hours, which is the typical amount of hours in a regular work week, to see that the employee received 6.75 hours overtime. So the employee worked 6.75 hours of overtime. Let's now compute the employee's overtime rate. Assuming that the employee is paid time and a half for every hour worked, we take 1.5 and multiply it by the employee's regular rate to see that his overtime rate is $12.36 per hour. Okay, so let's now compute the employee's regular earnings. To do so, we would take 40 hours worked in a regular week, multiply that by his regular rate of 8.24 to see that the employee's regular earnings are $329.60. Let's now compute the employee's overtime earnings. To do that, we would take the number of overtime hours worked, which we've found to be 6.75 hours, multiply that by the overtime rate of $12.36 per hour, to see that the employee's overtime earnings are $83.43. When we add the regular earnings to that of the overtime earnings, we see that the employee's gross earnings for the pay period are $413.03. Now let's compute the various taxes. First, we'll compute the amount of FICA tax that the employee needs to pay. Assuming a FICA rate of 6.2%, we see that the amount of FICA tax the employee must pay is $25.61. And we found that by taking 6.2% of the employee's gross earnings of $413.03. Let's now compute the employee's Medicare tax. To do so, we would take 1.45% of his gross earnings to see that the employee's Medicare tax amounts to $5.99. Finally, we will compute the SDI deduction. SDI stands for State Disability Insurance, and that rate is 1%. So we take 1% of $413.03 to see that the employee's SDI deduction is $4.13.